Welcome, weary travelers. Come, find sanctuary here. This is the Train Hands channel. So, you want to get into Milsim, eh? You watched a little too much propaganda showcasing the glory of the BB wars and decided you need a piece of that action, huh? But wait, how do you actually enlist your services to the cause of launching airsoft rifle plastics? LARPing. Well, I'm glad you asked, because we've got a show for you. Now that's covered, if you didn't catch today's video is how to Milsim. Right out the gate, this topic is actually one that there are a few other solid videos out there addressing already. Videos like Dirty Civilians, How to Use Milsim as a Training Tool, and Grand Thumbs, Should You Use Airsoft for Realistic Training, both of which I highly recommend. In this video, I'm going to strive to avoid reiterating aspects that those videos hit on better than anything that I could do personally. Instead, I'm going to focus more on the logistical considerations for getting started. Specifically, minimum kit needed / a basic packing list, minimum tactical knowledge, yes, we're talking about tactics, fitness considerations, mention reputable organizations, along with some general suggestions and tips. The goal here is to be that one video you send your friend that they can watch to answer the majority of their questions on the basic things they need to know and some of the specific items to get their foot in the door. This information will be coming from my personal perspective. Personally, I do not have an in-depth background in the Milsim / airsoft space, and thus far I have only attended 2 larger scale events, both being 2 different years of Iron Horse by American Milsim hosted at the Guardian Centers in Perry, Georgia. The primary context of these considerations is for that of utilizing Milsim / airsoft for training purposes. For those unfamiliar with such, meaning to use a Milsim environment to work on and to certain extents learn practices such as small unit tactics, SUT, CQB, close quarter battle, and general rifleman-oriented skills. While this is the primary context, this video is oriented to aid anyone in getting started in the Milsim / airsoft space, even just from a hobby standpoint, which, if we're being real, is still the underlying premise even for the tactical boys. We're all just LARPing guys, at least until we're not. First steps. Alright, you're officially interested or even committed and are ready for step 1. Let's take it to the very beginning and decide what kind of event you're interested in. Event selection. While there is a chance some of you may already have an idea of or even know the exact organization or event you want to start with, whether by your own accord or even from your buddy recruiting you to the cause, there are those who may be starting this journey solo. Here's some considerations on event selection for those. There are a few major organizations out there in the Milsim space within the states. For the beginner taking first steps into this realm, American Milsim and Third Coast are the arguable outliers. A large majority of experienced airsofters will likely recommend starting out at a local field. This is definitely a reasonable consideration for those looking to simply take that easy first step into the realm, prioritizing affordability, minimal commitment, and just dip their toes into the water. This can certainly be a viable option. However, it is notable from a training-focused perspective. It's highly encouraged to lean towards a larger organization's event. Generally speaking, these larger organizations' events are not only larger in size, but are overarchingly more consistent in their structuring, gameplay / rule sets, and even the level of individuals they attract, of which all can vary on experience, but equally, most all could be considered more serious players influencing your experience. To some, the thought of starting out at a large event can be a bit intimidating out the gate. Such is certainly understandable. But these organizations, I could speak especially towards American Milsim, are oriented to be just as welcoming to the first-time Milsimmer as the veterans who have been in the space for years. While your capabilities may not be in the same place or level as some of those aforementioned veterans, the events themselves are fully considerate of the first-timer. I say this in confidence, having just played with a squad of almost entirely first-time players, starting at a large event, and having come from this same place myself. Local fields and events can definitely be a great primer depending on priorities, but if you're looking for a full and predictable first experience, a larger event is for you. Squad/battle buddies. While it is certainly possible to jump into things solo, it is very much recommended to go into things with some community. For those approaching from a training perspective, get together some of your real steel, as the airsofters say, buddies, and go in squatting up or even just one bro and hit it as battle buddies. Not only will it be significantly more relevant to learn some lessons, both successes and failures, with your actual buddies, it will also significantly increase the overall enjoyment of the experience just having some good times with your boys. If you're in that position where you're un solo lobo, strive to do some research. Join some Facebook groups by the organizer or even just local ones in general. Reach out to some online buddies and so on. If you're still striking it out on your lonesome, then ultimately don't let it sway you from going for it and finding some guys out on the field. There are plenty of times in these events where you can easily fall in with a squad to push an objective, and in such meet and make new buddies just by running and bleeding together. We literally had a dude do exactly this with our squad this year. Shout out Squirrel. Yes, your call sign can hope to be this cool. This guy called me Welshman once from the way I ran, and it's all I've got.
I was just saying he runs like a Welshman, which is why I'm saying he's from Wales.
Squirrel fell right in, though, as he had a solid baseline of comprehension, along with his experience, on how to fit into a team, easily molding himself and having started as a total stranger to our group. Whatever boat you find yourself in, just send it and hit it with your built-up preparations and confidence. Minimum equipment. The minimum equipment suggestions I'm going to give here are going to be oriented towards American Milsim and their events, as they are the current entity that I have experience with. If you're approaching this from a training perspective, one of the biggest parts of this as a whole for yourself is having the ability to shake out and actually use your kit in a context that's relative to its actual purpose. For you, utilize the kit that makes the most sense for the event AO, area of operation, and mission set. For example, if your chosen event is an urban AO, such as Guardian Centers with a direct action mission set, then a plate carrier with a direct action focused support equipment should be the route you're going. For a rural AO, chest rig and sustainment oriented support equipment. You get the gist. For those who have either yet to jump into the realm of kit in their journey or are approaching this from more of a hobby entry standpoint, I'll go over the list breakdown of equipment suggestions next. General packing list. To start, let's break down the categories of equipment you're going to need. Load-bearing equipment, a primary weapon, uniform, support equipment, field and fob sustainment, and additional considerations. LBE. Load-bearing equipment, aka LBE, is the nylon equipment you wear on body to store and carry your mission essential gear. LBE is typically comprised of a primary rig, supporting rig, and possibly a beltline rig. As mentioned earlier, take into consideration what LBE makes the most sense for your given AO. For those just trying to get their foot in the door, at minimum, a basic chest rig, such as Haley Strategics D3CRM, if I got that right, Velocity Systems Mayflower, Onward Research's Recce Rig, a surplus TAPS rig, look it up, Spirit Systems and their offerings, any of T-Rex Arms' offerings, or just the Amazon Krydex special if you're really on a budget. Pair that with a hydration/minimalist pack, Haley Strategic Flat Pack, Camelback, or so on, as appropriate to you. Primary weapon. If you're going to commit BB war crimes, then you have got to have something to throw them BBs with. Enter the primary weapon. For the most part, starting out with a standard rifle for a rifleman's role is arguably both the most relevant for the individual approaching from a training perspective, and it's the easiest to get into, practically speaking. I won't speak too in-depth into brands and models, as like I mentioned, I'm not an airsofter, I'm a preparedness guy. But what you're looking for starting out is a rifle that is a minimum quality level to withstand the stress and degree of usage from a larger event, and from a training standpoint, a platform that most closely reflects your real steel platform. Simple example, if your primary rifle is a 16-inch AR of some variant, don't suddenly harness your inner leanings towards the motherland or desire for jihad and go full send on an AK. If you're striving to be effective, get something as similar as possible and set it up with the same or similar furniture as your main. Personally, I literally take the furniture off of my real primary rifle and slap it directly onto my airsoft rifle. In regards to the minimum support and furniture for your rifle, you'll need magazines, BBs, a speed loader, rifle batteries. Titan batteries are popular if compatible with your rifle, an optic, a weapon-mounted light, and ideally a sling. Do your research as to which selections of these are the best for you, but generally you can pick these things up relatively affordably from reputable entities such as Evike for the easiest airsoft example. For your rifle itself, again, do your own research, but a generally well-known starter brand suggestion is G&G Armament. Don't kill me, airsofters. The two rifles I personally own are a Krytac Trident, which is my main, and a G&G Combat Machine as my second/spare. Take that for what it's worth. Uniform. Your uniform type and pattern/colorways will almost certainly vary depending on the type of event you select, so I won't speak too much to that, as essentially whatever event you select will give you clear instructions in regards to pattern/color requirements. Instead, I'll go over a general list of the items themselves. Just be mindful of the weather considerations for your event and dress accordingly. Note, generally speaking, if you're wanting to go the simplest, most affordable route in regards to pattern/colorway, within the states at least, go with a team at the event you choose that utilizes woodland and ranger green. You can always purchase these surplus uniform items relatively affordably to save some initial coin getting your foot in the door. Top. For your top, either a combat top or a field top will serve as your best bet. Check out Spirit Systems' video, Field Top versus Combat Shirt, for some context on selection. Personally, I recently picked up the Velocity Systems long sleeve rugby shirt to fill a combat top role for airsoft in hot environments. Shout out to my man Mav, Modern Day Patriot on Insta, for the recommendation. Check him out for base preparedness and biblical manhood-oriented content. Bottoms. Bottoms are arguably pretty versatile for selection, and in my own, if you're going to cheap out a little bit, somewhere to start is this place. Essentially, as long as they adhere to pattern/color considerations, are relatively comfortable, and provide some additional pockets for admin items as needed, pocket frags are your friends, then you can make do. In an ideal world, integrated knee pads or at minimum strap-on knee pads are a solid add-on as well. Not a must if you're on a budget, but highly recommended. Footwear. The need for a quality pair of boots that ideally you have experience putting miles in and have shaken out in prior usage is an absolute must. Spiritus Systems also has a video on boots, recommend that as well. Combine such with at least 2 total pairs, 1 active set and 1 spare minimum of high quality wool socks. Darn tough or a widely used option by many, myself included. Outer layers. Outer layers are relatively simple. If your environment calls for such, utilize them. Whether wind, insulation, or rain, just ensure adherence to uniform regs as continually harped on. Support equipment. PPE. When you're fighting the BB wars, iPro are a must-have requirement, literally. Ensure you get iPro that are appropriate to your organization's regs, as they can vary. In addition, make sure to have some sort of anti-fog solution. Spray and a microfiber cloth at absolute minimum. Next to iPro is EarPro. While they may or may not be required, just go ahead and wear them. Which, if you're running the next 2 items, then you'll likely be utilizing over EarPro anyway. Headgear. A dad cap or helmet go a long way in this realm. Ideally, a bump helmet at minimum will protect your cranium along with support EarPro as prior mentioned in conjunction with comms. Comms are a massive asset to your squad and your team as a whole. Having the ability to communicate intel and coordinate actions at distance without having to literally yell out your intent for all to hear is an obvious advantage. There are obnoxious amounts of content out there in regards to comms. Personally, I've enjoyed defense distributors as a resource on the subject. Kill indicators. This is pretty simple. When you die in a massive blaze of glory, you have to indicate that you did in fact succumb. Hence, the kill flag. Literally just a red bandana essentially for daytime and a red light of some variant, whether battery powered or chem light, for low light / night. Field and FOB sustainment. Sustainment considerations are crucial to maintain capabilities and the longevity of the game. Hydration and electrolytes. Simply put, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Prehydrate at least a week in advance of an event itself, especially if in a hot environment. And utilize electrolytes as they are relevant. I personally lean towards LMNT in their offerings. Caloric sustainment. Having calorically dense foods to keep you going is the way. Jerky, beef sticks like chomps, protein bars, everything bagels, peanut butter, tortillas, so on. Personally, I avoid MREs and Mountain House style meals in the field for these events, as not to take the time or the cleanup involved. Additional considerations. Media gear. If you're out there doing it for the gram, you gotta get that content somehow. Break out that helmet-mounted GoPro, my boy. Pro tip. Run a battery pack in your Mohawk on your helmet with a cord ran to your camera. Way better than constantly having to swap batteries. Lighting solutions. Have white light and red light available aside from your weapon-mounted lights. Headlamp or helmet-mounted light, chem lights, handheld, etc. Administrative and maintenance gear. Multi-tool, spare batteries / charging considerations for all items, spare fuses or other spare or field repair parts as relevant for your rifle and kit. It sucks to have to call a hit and walk all the way back to the fob just to swap a blown fuse. A timepiece aside from your phone, maps and relevant navigation equipment, minimum emergency medical kit, have a couple real TQs, and an IFAK at minimum. I'm personally fond of Snake Staff Systems ETQs and Live the Creed's Everyday IFAK for minimum on-body med in the field. A boo-boo kit, some band-aids, liquid bandage, and moleskins at minimum, and so on. Comfort gear and considerations. Strive to carry as little as relatively possible. have a quality pack or even a wagon for you big brain boys that can comfortably carry all of your gear in one place/trip. If you're a chafer, make sure you powder up appropriately. And finally, if you've got one of those cushion pads from the stadium that you can take along with you, take that boy, throw it on the ground when you get back to the fob, and enjoy. Night vision and thermal. All right, all you rich-blooded pedigree boys, now's the time to shine. If you're going to run night ops for events like these, helmet-mounted nods and thermal options are obvious force multipliers, and depending on the AO, could even be argued as essential. Which, in Grand Thumb's Airsoft video, he obviously exemplified thoroughly. Then again, not all of us, myself included, have quite made that epitome in our journey as of yet, so good thing for us, there's rentals. Most events have them. Great opportunity to get some practical experience if you have never had the chance, along with the obvious benefits for the gameplay. If it is your first time, just ensure to research some resources on the basics of use for beginners. Also, make sure to take a second and look up and admire those stars, then tell me again that we weren't created by an all-powerful God. Spoiler, we were. Minimum tactics knowledge. Next up, let's get into the controversial stuff. Tactics. But Hunter, you were in the military. You can't talk about tactics. Well, you're right. I will not speak in authority on tactics. All right, guys, catastrophe averted. But I will speak on some basic considerations and mention resources for you to do with as you will. Milsim is a literal game of military simulation. It not only makes sense, but is arguably critical to have a basic knowledge of tactics and teamwork for actually playing to win the game. Obviously, for those approaching from a training context, this is a given. But even for those who just want to have some fun, having a baseline knowledge on small unit tactics and CQB from a rifleman's perspective is a massive attribution to capable gameplay. Resources. Some basic recommended resources without taking a class. Grand Thumb's CQB and room clearing video, his How to Survive an Ambush video, Dirty Civilian's CQB Every Civilian Should Know video, Blue Jean Operators Dominate Airsofters with Infantry Tactics, Dynamic Defense Solutions photo resources on Instagram and their podcast, along with the Good Old Ranger Handbook. For classes and general training, Bear Solutions out of Tennessee, the God-fearing gents over at Barrel and Hatchet Training Group in Florida, Orion Training Group all over the place, and Dynamic Defense Solutions for you crazy Alaskans, just to name a few. Classes are great, but equally it's worth noting there's a considerable amount that can be studied and relatively self-taught well before taking any classes. Personally, I've yet to take any official classes, and just relatively recently am getting to the point in my training where I'm finding the need to soon pursue some more advanced instruction and coaching, especially in the medical and combatives realm, to specify. Minimum fitness considerations. Last but certainly not least, the minimum considerations when it comes to physical fitness. Simply put, while you technically can be out of shape or even obese and attend an event like this, frankly, it's not going to be ideal. If you're not capable of a bare minimum level of endurance and have done zero training in advance, even if just from a general fitness regime, not necessarily a training program oriented for Milsim, then you're setting yourself up to be a liability for your team, along with decreasing the prospective participation you'll be able to give in the event simply from your lack of ability to endure the basic challenges of the event. In general, high-level functional fitness is encouraged by the community and especially by this channel. Embrace your manhood and the pain of physical and spiritual refinement, gentlemen. But equally, if you're in a place of your journey where you are not yet at that ideal end state, which I personally can relate to, don't let it sway you from participation. Yes, it may be a bit more of a challenge, but embracing the challenge is one of the largest parts of the experience. In closing, overall, my goal with this video is to serve as a baseline to help you get started in the Milsim/Airsoft space, whether you're a serious prepared citizen or just looking for another space to have some fun with the boys. Shoutouts to all my squad buddies for the last 2 years' events that shared and starred in my B-roll footage. Creds to Applesauce Engineering specifically for the night vision footage. Find him on Insta at Applesauce Engineering. If you appreciated this video's information or thought provocation, please consider liking, subscribing, and all the things. You can also find me over on Instagram at Trained Hands and at Hunter Wealot. Additionally, on Patreon at Trained Hands, and have merch available upon request. Most importantly, turn to Christ. Embrace identity in Him, daily discipline, and the pain of physical and spiritual refinement. Brothers in Christ, pick up your cross and carry it daily. May the Lord bless you and keep you. See you guys.